Your expected approach time 3-4, approach button 17, the altimeter 2997.
Well, hello and welcome back to the DCS Situation Report. I'm your host, Prickly Hedgehog, and I hope this video finds you well, as always. And of course, welcome to any first-time viewers to the channel. It's a slow news week in the DCS world, and from the ED team this week, the only dropping news was centered on the JF17 and of course the summer sale right now, which charges on into the weekend. I actually picked up the P-47D to add to the few warbirds that I own, and Juice and I did a little midweek flying, a heritage flight of the two Thunderbolts, old and new in the game, just for kicks. Now we decided to take a fun little jaunt in the channel map from ED, and if you haven't tried that map out, it's worth a look as it's absolutely stunning. You can zip along the coast and enjoy the cliffs around Dover, or you can head inland and cruise over parts of the English landscape from a beautiful bygone era. It's a lot of fun. Now, of course, if that's not your thing, there are, naturally enough, a ton of other things on sale right now to peruse in the eShop, so don't miss out on those. Some of the modules, remember, and some of the campaigns are actually up to 50% off. It's a great time to pick up a module or two and a map or whatever else you want, so don't miss out on those sales.
I did a landing where I put the camera at the end of the runway looking at the approach and flew this bird into land, and the sound was pretty awesome.
Now, getting back to the JF17, as mentioned, third-party developer Decker Ironworks Simulations has in fact provided their roadmap for the module according to the ED newsletter. Now, apparently it is scheduled to exit early access by December of 2022, and by the end of the year, the following items will also be completed: Chinese flight manual updates, the English flight manual update after they've finished the Chinese version, improvements to existing sensors and certain bug fixes for the radar and the pod, etc., and also improvements to existing weapons and a bunch of other fixes to certain bugs. Weapon features will be updated as soon as possible, with missing sensor features and functionality, such as the WA radar mode, which will be added once they are available in DCS World. After early access, the module will continue to receive updates. Notably, external textures will be finalized and more liveries will be added, which is good news. A canopy ejection animation and a detailed model of the landing gear compartment will also be added. Naturally enough, with all these improvements and as the game evolves, the damage model and levels of detail will continue to be updated. Now, this is a popular little module, and while I do own it, I haven't had enough time in the seat to comment on the various features and the flight model. The module. This is a popular little module, and while I do own it, I haven't had time in the seat to really comment on the various features and the flight model. I was pretty impressed with the cockpit's relatively intuitive layout and ease of use. I can see the fun in an aircraft of this type, which provides modern equipment and sensor capacity, and of course weapons without overt complexity that, say, the A10C2 might provide, especially if you are an entry-level full-fidelity module owner looking for a new aircraft. Now, if you are a Thunder pilot, let us know what you think about the module and what we can expect from this handy little plane, and perhaps some of the features you don't like. Again, I think the aircraft packs quite a punch among the available or more well-known F-16 and F-18 4th-gen aircraft, with perhaps a smidge less complexity. Like I said, this is all that ED has for us this week, but the community has provided some interesting tidbits for us to digest, and I thought I'd bring you some of those to flesh out this week's show. We'll start with OctopusG, who surprised us with some great footage of their savage-looking Red 4 Cold War fighter, the Su-22 fitter. Prior to this, they brought us, of course, the unusual-looking I-16 in-game, which sports a rather truncated fuselage and that distinctive snub-nose front end, so they're not new to DCS World modules. The reveal video was by Billy Trim, and it showcased some aspects of the flight model, such as aileron rolls and speed runs with the wings swept and not swept, and also a spin recovery. The interior and exterior modeling is all early days, but it was nonetheless another welcome aircraft to see being introduced. So stay tuned for more info on its progress and a possible early access release date, which I don't expect this year, perhaps sometime next year. Stay tuned, we'll see what happens. Now, unofficial mods have been dominating the news as well over the recent months, with a plethora of teams putting together, as I said, unofficial mods for us to try out. And another one was revealed recently too. It's the SK60, originally developed by Saab and used apparently by the Swedish Air Force as a jet trainer. Now, the teaser video was put up by YouTuber Breadmaker's channel, and it illustrated some of the work the team are doing to model this rather interesting side trainer, which I can see having some pretty decent benefits in the game. Now, it was developed in the early 60s, and it still appears to be flying after several longevity upgrades to keep it airworthy until its replacement sometime in the next few years. Now, as a recent quip by Eagle Dynamics' business development manager Simon Pearson indicated, these unofficial mods do showcase what the community is interested in for future products. Signals a lot of stuff to ED about where people are looking for entertainment within the game. Now, as the player base continues to grow, it appears that more niches within the options of aircraft available may become more viable. So it's very, very exciting stuff. Let me know what you think about the Su-22 and also this new free mod when it comes available, the SK60, and what you think about them being in the game. Speaking of Simon Pearson, about a week ago you may have seen yet another interview on FastJet Performance's YouTube channel, where I actually picked up that comment about the independent modules, or mods. Now, the channel, if you're unfamiliar, is hosted by the fast-talking Tim Davies, a former RAF Tornado pilot who is currently offering what is effectively paid-for lessons for DCS players looking for a more formal syllabus. He's an interesting character, shall we say, with some pretty direct political opinions, somewhat to the right of Ward Carroll, to put things into perspective for the uninitiated. Now, that aside, the interview with Pearson and also ED staffer Ben Whiteley had some interesting gems of information, and I'll dip into those so you don't have to, unless of course you really want to, and I'll plonk the link in the video comment section below, or the video description below, so that you can check it out for yourself. Now, the big confusion right now centers on the Tornado, which understandably Davies would have some passion for seeing in the game, and he asked, given its feature in the game from time to time in videos of recent times, if that signaled that we would see a future Tornado in the game by Eagle Dynamics. Now, Pearson replied that the Tornado is planned, was the quote there. Now, it appears that this comment has been refuted by other ED spokespersons, and in the past, this has also been denied, even after it was showcased briefly in a video earlier this year. Now, the issue is, I guess, as clear as mud, and it signals perhaps that Pearson either misspoke, wasn't authorized to speak, or the head doesn't know what the hand is doing, or there is some other logical explanation afoot in terms of where ED sits on the module, such as the definition of is planned. It probably does little good to twist ourselves knots, but of course the interest is peaked right now as the comment comes on the heels of recent news that a study level module for the jet will be available in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Now, as exciting as that news sounds for many of you, it's important to remember that while the game provides some amazing visual flight experiences and is incredibly detailed and beautiful, where ED excels and DCS World excels, of course, is that it provides the combat portion that we look for in our jets. Now, it's one thing to create the planes and the flight model and all the rest of it. It's another to embellish it with weapons that behave realistically in-game and against appropriate opposition and threats. It's a bit like taking an expensive sports car to a track, which won't let you get it out of third gear. It's kind of fun, but something is missing from the total experience you were hoping for. Regardless, the jet's appearance in DCS World is a much-demanded fan request, For now, though, it's not looking overly promising that we'll see it in game. We'll have to wait and see. What does appear to be promising, though, is the possibility of the F4 still being on track for late 2022, with the Typhoon coming apparently in early 2023. This will, of course, be very, very welcome news, as both aircraft are also huge fan favorites. Again, the proof will be in the pudding, and Heatblur, who are involved in the development of both products, are notoriously tight-lipped about development progress. Stay tuned, in other words, for more information as soon as it comes to hand, because I'm excited about those two aircraft. Now, ED are still working on Vulkan API and the dynamic campaign, both of which are massively involved according to the interview. The former with at least 2 full-time employees tackling the project. Again, no word on possible release dates or progress updates. Vulkan will be ready when it's ready, was the best answer able to be provided. It appears too that ED are getting well down in the weeds on this dynamic campaign as well, so expect a complex model with a lot of layers, I believe, when the feature becomes available in the game. Of course, this is oft asked for, and ED is aware that the majority of their player base is still solo, and of course this is because of the intimidation of getting involved with multiplayer, and also people just wanting to be able to do their own thing without being interrupted by the annoyance of other players or the intimidation factor that I mentioned before, and just having a little bit more control over what you want to do in the game as opposed to having to slot in with other people, which makes sense. Now, good news, there is a ticket in to allow players to save the game at any point in order to restart it later. Now, this is a massively helpful feature which really needs attention, I must say, especially for the solo campaigns and missions in the game. Pearson advised that as the player base has grown, they have seen an increase in the number of average minutes players are spending in the game, the majority, of course, who are solo players. So this ticket is an important one. Now, some of you will have asked too about the replay system, and this also came up as part of a discussion. Now, apparently this dodgy system is actually not a purpose-built replay system, and this is why we have problems with it. Rather, it was actually designed as a bug resolution system for programmers. So it records player input, but of course any data loss over time leads to these wonky track files where data ends up being lost or corrupted, and invariably it does not recreate what you thought you did in game. So again, it's not a proper replay system. It was designed to measure inputs and gather data. So that's why you will see the track files become corrupted or appear to be corrupted because of the loss of data over a period of time. Now this again is another feature ED desire to overhaul, of course, which is at this time a work in progress, along with the air traffic control system, which is also being worked on and does require the recording of thousands of lines of dialogue to bring it to life and spruce up. So that is also being worked on and is planned.
Come out of burner as soon as your gear handle comes up. Fly at 250.
Also being worked on, of course, is the dynamic weather. This again came up in discussion, which will, of course, enhance the already amazing static weather and cloud systems brought into the game more recently. Visually, some of these are the most impressive I've seen in any flight simulator. It's probably one of the single biggest immersion improvements to the game over the last few years because of that visual experience, which is critical to our own flight experiences and believability. Once again, no timelines were discussed, but any improvements to that with dynamic weather is only going to increase immersive experience, so stay tuned for more info on that. I cannot wait to see that in the game. I think it's going to be a huge boost, especially if they're able to get some other bits and pieces like maybe hail or more realistic looking rain on the cockpit windshields and the cockpit canopies, etc., etc. Again, stay tuned. We'll have to wait and see. So these are the main highlights of the interview that were discussed, and I'll put the link for that in the description below. Suffice to say, these are some of the most oft-asked questions on my channel too, and all, of course, are relevant to the broader DCS experiences we are hoping to get from the game, which I think are rapidly improving overall. One thing that amused me, though, and I think was a great idea, was the ability to do a head nod in VR for VR pilots flying together for signaling takeoff, etc., etc. We have our own wish list on the Air Warfare group, including the expansion of, as mentioned by Juice recently, the Nevada map with bases like Fallon, and other features in the map that we would like to improve, just because we enjoy flying there for training. It's a really, really good map, and I know it's one of Tricker's favorites as well. Do check that out if you haven't. It doesn't appear to be an exciting map because it is, sort of landlocked, but it does lend itself to some really interesting flying conditions, and those mountains look pretty realistic too. So, again, something else to check out.
Raven 4-2, turning in as a fighter.
This brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for tuning in again. Huge thanks for the support for the channel. We did crack a major milestone in support from you all with 8,000 subscribers about a week and a half ago. That was massive. Thank you so much. And on that basis, if you like the channel, do subscribe, don't forget. And of course, like and comment in the comment section below. Thanks to those of you who contribute to the super thanks button by hitting that. It really is appreciated, not expected or demanded from me, but it certainly helps the channel chug along. So, again, thank you all for the support. I am aiming for 10,000 subscribers this year. We're halfway through the year now, so it's going to be a little tight. We'll see how things go. In the interim, take care. Have a great weekend. There's a bit of a celebration in the US going on right now. Hopefully it's a peaceful weekend for us, and I'll see you next time on the DCS Situation Report.
Raven 4-2, single group, 180, 30 miles, 20,000, heading 360.
That's your bogey.
Raven 4-2.
Knock it off, knock it off. Raven 4-1, knock it off.
Raven 4-2, knock it off.
Raven 4-1 is continuing north, flip, detach south.
Raven 4-2, detaching south.